Brendan Sorsby is going to go all in on the supplemental draft. Can he parlay that into a starting opportunity in 2026? We'll talk about what teams might make that wager on this episode of the BJack 70 Show. Welcome back to the BJack 70 Show, and we're talking once again about Brendan Sorsby, a topic that I never would have known, never would have thought that I'd be talking about this much this offseason, but news broke Monday night. Brendan Sorsby will be officially entering the supplemental NFL draft in 2026. As of recording, it's still not official because that has to be approved. But from what I understand, Brendan Sorsby will be dropping his lawsuit against the NCAA, and that injunction that allowed him to play for Texas Tech will be dropped. So once that gets dropped, it is very likely that he'll be eligible to be picked in the supplemental draft in the NFL. Now, again, if you've been following, if you haven't been following, the supplemental draft is basically in the NFL offseason. It doesn't happen every year. It only happens if there's players in it, and there's usually not players in the supplemental draft, but it happens. Something happens in college. After the regular NFL draft, somebody wants to apply for the supplemental draft. Usually they've got in trouble or something has gone wrong in college, and they'll hop over in the NFL in the supplemental draft. What happens is teams, they will bid a draft pick. So they might, let's say they'll bid a third round pick. If multiple teams bid a third round pick, whoever selected the highest in the regular draft will get that third round pick. So that's how the supplemental draft goes. Not something that usually happens, but it's happened in the past with Terrell Pryor, quarterback out of Ohio State, who was getting suspended because he sold some memorabilia in exchange for tattoos. That was way back before NIL and players got paid. And then Josh Gordon also entered the supplemental draft. He got suspended at Baylor. I don't know if he got suspended by the NCAA or by Baylor, but he got suspended, and then he chose to enter the supplemental draft. Worth noting, both of those players got suspended upon coming into the NFL. So it is worth noting the NFL does not want to be a safe haven for college football players that get in trouble in college. So it is very likely Brendan Sorsby will be suspended upon getting drafted into the NFL. How long of a suspension it might be, we have no idea. Nobody knows. Anybody telling you that they know is probably lying, making stuff up, clickbaiting, whatever. We have no idea. But I can probably say for certain he will get suspended for at least a few games coming into the league. So it kind of muddies the water with his draft prospects. But let's talk about Brendan Sorsby specifically. So there's been speculation all offseason if he was to be in the supplemental draft. What is he worth? What is he worth as a prospect in the supplemental draft? And you're never going to see a first round pick be put up for bid for one of these players. It would have to be an extraordinary circumstance for a first round pick to be given up in this draft. And I don't expect that to happen here. I think we're starting at a second round pick. And even that might be too high. It's definitely too rich for my blood. If I was an NFL team, I would not want to potentially waste or gamble, pun intended, a second round pick on somebody like Brendan Sorsby. But that's on the outside looking in because I don't know, these teams are doing their due diligence. I don't know if is he really addicted to gambling, or is he just a horrible decision maker? Either way, either one of those choices, I'm not very comfortable with that being my starting quarterback. But I think there are going to be a lot of teams. Well, maybe not a lot of teams, but there will be teams that think otherwise. There are going to be teams that put in bids and potentially get Brendan Sorsby on their roster. I I don't agree with it. It's not something I would do, but we're here now and we have to look at the possibility and talk about the possibility of this actually happening. The last Brendan Sorsby video I did a week ago, I was shocked and appalled that he was going to play college football again. I couldn't believe it, and now I'm happy. I'm happy now that it's not going to happen because this is absolutely the right move. Um, After I posted that video, kind of all hell broke loose in college athletics. Numerous athletic directors, commissioner of the Big 12, not even just football programs, but programs at large refusing to schedule, potentially refusing to play against Texas Tech this season and upcoming seasons. It was just really going to be absolute chaos when it came to that. And I'm glad Texas Tech realized, I'm glad Sorsby realized he was probably not worth all of this trouble. The black eye that it would have put over the sport. And Texas Tech, I don't know who the majority of this decision was from, but either Texas Tech decided that it wasn't worth the trouble. Brendan Sorsby saw what it was going to look like all season, so they came to an agreement and they chose for him to enter the supplemental draft. So that I'm glad happened. But looking forward to who might want to select Brendan Sorsby. People are split, and I was looking all over the Twitter timeline earlier today when this news dropped. Fans are split. Some people feel like the NFL won't want him because of these gambling accusations, situation, whatever he's put himself in. But on the other hand, he's a quarterback, so there are going to be teams that want him. And I do fall on that other side. There are going to be teams that want him, that bid a pick on him. I get if I was an NFL franchise, if I was going to do it, it would probably be a third round pick. I would be happy to have him on the team for a third round pick if I desperately needed a quarterback. I could live with myself bidding a third round pick, and if somebody wanted to go with a second, I would be perfectly fine saying, you know what, y'all got it. Have fun, good luck. That's too rich for my blood. I would be okay sleeping at night with that. And if I put a third rounder in, and let's say it catastrophically doesn't work out, I would be okay with myself saying we tried. It was another avenue to potentially get a franchise quarterback. I'm okay with losing that third round pick. I've watched the Browns already do it. They've spent a third round pick on Dylan Gabriel. So actually, I'm coming to this realization in real time on camera. We've already put a third round pick into Dylan Gabriel. I guess why not put one into Brendan Sorsby? I swear I had not really thought about that until I just said it. And now it kind of makes sense. Now I don't hate it. Now that we've already wasted a third round pick. Might as well try again. See if it works out this time. But speaking of the Browns, let's talk about the teams that could possibly take him. And we'll start in Cleveland. The quarterback competition is ongoing. Check out my last video talking about how I think Shador Sanders is going to be QB1. Now I've kind of switched my stance. I think he's going to be quarterback one, but they haven't named a starter yet. If either Deshaun or Shador Sanders were, really standing out in the offseason, in OTAs, in minicamp, there would be a starter name by now, and that hasn't happened. So I'm wondering how they feel about that quarterback room right now. Todd Monken is saying all the right things, saying he feels good about the room. Both of these guys can be a starter. So they're saying all the right things publicly. We'll see what, when this happens, how they really feel internally. Because we'll find out. We'll find out. If they really want Brendan Sorsby and they put up a second round pick, then we'll really know at least how the front office and the organization feels about this quarterback room. I have reason to believe that they don't feel great about it, that they want to at least look into Brendan Sorsby, despite even what Todd Monken said. Todd Monken felt pretty strongly or said pretty strongly that he wasn't, interested in the Sorsby route, but Andrew Berry was less staunch in his stance. Andrew Berry kind of left that door open, didn't want to go too strong in either direction. So we truly don't really know how the Browns organization feels about Brendan Sorsby. It makes sense for them to bid a pick. It truly does. If you can possibly get a first round talent like Brendan Sorsby at quarterback for cheaper than a first round pick, then you have to do it. The argument comes down to, do you believe that he's a first round talent? I'm not sure that I believe that. I From what I've seen, I would say, he is in the running to be a first round talent. I would have needed to see this year at Texas Tech to be able to give a complete picture. Because again, we keep coming back to it. Everybody loves talking about Brendan Sorsby and how good of a prospect he is. If he was that good of a prospect, he would have declared last year. He would have been in this past draft. He would have been one of the quarterbacks taken in the first round. It would have been Mendoza, Ty Simpson, Brendan Sorsby. If he was that good, he would have been in the draft. And that's flat out how I feel about that. It's, him is a little different than Dante Moore. I think Dante Moore really wanted to come back and cement himself as the number one quarterback, the top guy. So I understand him coming back to Oregon and not declaring. But Brendan Sorsby, if he was that guy in that class, especially with Dante Moore going back to school, he would have declared. So I really am not sold on Sorsby as a flat out first round type guy. He definitely could have been with some more good tape. He definitely could have been, probably would have been. But I hesitate to say that outright. So yeah, Browns, it makes sense. It makes sense for them to try, especially because he's probably, like I said, going to carry some type of suspension, and they already have two ready to go. Whether either of those two options are going to be really good for them in 2026, yet to be seen. Deshaun Watson, most likely no. Shador Sanders, we'll see. But with Sorsby probably being suspended for who knows amount of time, it could make sense to set yourself up for 2027. You have a young quarterback on the roster that you want to build with. Use those 2 first-round picks that you have, put talent around it. Get a receiver, or get a corner to replace potentially Denzel Ward. I'm looking at Leonard Moore. Get a receiver. We all know Jeremiah Smith. We all know Cam Coleman. Or maybe supercharge your defensive line. You lost Myles Garrett. Maybe you just put 2 crazy star ends with Mason Graham in the middle, and you go get Colin Simmons, or you go get Dylan Stewart, something like that. Or maybe you don't like what you got from Spencer Fano at left tackle, but you want to put him at guard. Maybe you get Jordan Seaton. Maybe you get Goodsby from Texas. There's a bunch of things you can do if you don't need a quarterback in the 2027 draft. So I understand the vision for the Browns to do it. And I kind of, at this point, I expect them to put a bid in for Sorsby. Fact just remains to be seen if they get him. But I don't necessarily want them to do it, but I understand at this point. Because essentially the case is, why not? So there you go for that. Next team, potentially, the New York Jets. They have Geno Smith on the roster again. He's going to be your starter. He's not going to be your long-term starter. Just for the simple fact, I don't know how long Aaron Glenn is going to be there. Geno is a free agent, I believe, after this season. So it truly would make sense for them to bring in Brendan Sorsby, let him sit behind Geno the full year. Keep him out of the spotlight, let him learn behind a true veteran quarterback, and then you're ready to go. Jets, it's the same program that the Browns will be on, because the Jets have 2 first-round picks next year as well, based off the Sauce Gardner trade, if I'm remembering correctly. So yes, they have Cade Klubnik as a rookie on the roster. Don't care. Cade Klubnik, I'm not worried about Cade Klubnik in the slightest at quarterback for the New York Jets. Who did they have? They had another guy, a young guy last year. Who was it? Damn, I don't even remember. But damn, who was it? I don't remember. Anyway, doesn't matter. I can see them bringing in Sorsby. The Browns and the Jets are the strong 2 that I think probably would actually do this. And the fact Brendan Sorsby wants to go into the draft, maybe he got some kind of assurance from one of these teams, or maybe even a different team, that they would pick him. So it remains to be seen how that will go. But I could definitely see the Jets. I could definitely see the Browns. The Cardinals, I hesitate saying the Cardinals because they spent their own 3rd-rounder this past year on Carson Beck, and they might really be interested to see what they can do, what they have with Carson Beck. I don't know. If I was them personally, I'd rather have Brendan Sorsby than Carson Beck, but I'm a known Carson Beck hater. So maybe you might not be able to take my word unbiased against Carson Beck, and I admit that up front. So if it was me, I'd rather have Sorsby, but they already spent that pick. They just spent that pick on Carson Beck, so I don't know. Jacoby Brissett, Gardner, is Gardner Minshew still there? Yeah, they signed Gardner Minshew. That might be a too crowded of a room to bring Sorsby in there. So I have the Cardinals on the list, but I'm not quite sure. But this next team, I think probably won't consider it, but I think they really should consider it. and that team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield is a free agent in 2027. He does not have a contract past this year. They reports are that they are not close in contract extension talk. Seems like the Bucks want to give Baker something. Baker probably wants more, or maybe more years, more money. We don't know the situation, but they do not have a contract agreed to yet. If you don't want to pay Baker Mayfield, this might be a viable option to replace him in 2027. Maybe it's a win-win. Baker gets to hit free agency, test the market. Tampa Bay goes into 2027 with a quarterback they want on the roster. They don't have to put big money into. It could be a win-win for both. Especially given how 2025 ended for Baker, and we don't know what 2026 is going to look like yet. Baker is a big bet on himself guy, for better or for worse. So I definitely could see him betting on himself, not taking what he might feel is a low ball offer, and taking it into free agency, taking it through the season, trying to perform well. I, from experience, don't think that would go too well for Tampa Bay's prospects in 2026, but who am I to judge? But Brendan Sorsby could be a viable option to have as a backup and a replacement in 2027. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's crazy. And a couple of teams that people might be thinking of, I don't think should be involved. The Steelers got Aaron Rodgers starting, and they have Drew Aller and Will Howard behind them. Drew Aller is an interesting enough prospect that I think they should probably just try to put all their energy and resources into him rather than trying to bring in Brendan Sorsby, potentially piss off Aaron Rodgers. I think they have enough on their plate to handle. I don't think they need to bring in Sorsby to try to add to it. The Minnesota Vikings, they have JJ McCarthy, they have Kyler Murray. If it would have to be a situation where they knew JJ McCarthy just like really wasn't it. That would be the only way to bring Sorsby into this. But I think Kyler Murray is going to be their quarterback in 2026, of course. But I believe, how I feel about Kyler on his channel. I believe Kyler is going to be a long-term option for this team. I think he's going to look really good with KOC at head coach, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, everybody in that offense. I think he's going to look very good. So I think he's going to be a long-term option for this team. So I don't think they need to bring him in. And then just in case anybody was thinking about the Atlanta Falcons, they got Tua, they got Penix. Not sure this is something Kevin Stefanski would want to do. Maybe they would want to think about bringing Sorsby in and next year getting rid of Tua and Penix, but that feels messy. I don't like that fit really either. So I don't think they should do it there. But really, when it comes down to it, I'm looking at the Jets, the Browns, and the Bucks for who might want to take Sorsby. We'll see. We'll see who really wants him. We'll see where he ends up going. I would have never imagined I talked about Brendan Sorsby this much before July. But here we are. So Thank you for watching this episode of the BJack 70 Show. You're still here. Go ahead, hit that like button. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you watching. And we'll talk again. We'll talk again later in the next video.